Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm your host today, Russ Hicks. I'm a partner at Public Sector Partners Incorporated, which is a catalyst organization that tries to marry the needs of public sector with the solutions from the private sector. I want to welcome you all to the first Government Mobility 2012 conference. This was an initial foray who had its genesis about 9 months ago when everybody was saying smartphones and tablets, who cares? Obviously, in the last 9 months, the impetus for figuring out how to leverage this technology has caught fire. So our timing couldn't be better. So I'm excited to see everybody here and a full house. One note, most of the sessions are going to be very, very full, so please, in your transition process, get to each session as quickly as you can to grab a seat. First slide. Thank you. You got it. You're quick. All right, let me start by thanking our sponsors. As you can see on the screen, we have a lot of them. And one request we had of the sponsors was, in order to participate in this, you truly had to be able to present solutions that were applicable in the mobile space for the public sector. So out in the Solution Center area, which I'll talk about more in detail in just a minute, you will find solutions from all of these sponsors. Take a moment and visit them, and I apologize for not going through them in detail, but we're just a little bit late starting, so I want to get your first speaker up here as quickly as I can. Next slide. The next group I would like to thank is the visionaries that were willing to get together 9 months ago to begin to lay out the content that you're going to get to experience today. This is content driven by the public sector, your peers, that's indicated 9 months ago, these were the issues that we're beginning to have to look at and need solutions for. And as I stated, the private sector stepped to the plate with educational resources to conduct the training sessions. I'd like to take a moment and thank the advisory board because they worked for 9 months to put this together. And speaking from the heart, I think they truly did an outstanding job. So I'm going to read everybody's name off. If you wouldn't mind standing when I get finished, please, I'd like to acknowledge you. So we have Aaron Lee from Gartner, Amy Tong from the Board of Equalization, and Barsodi from the Department of Transportation, Bernard Soriano from the Department of Motor Vehicles, Bill Cody from Hewlett-Packard, Brenda Baranek from Accenture, Mike Christensen from Good Technologies, Brian Jones, the Senior Account Executive for Unisys Corporation, Brian Horn, the past board president, I was told, for MESAC, Carlos Ramos, the Secretary for the California Technology Agency, Carolyn Hogg, the CIO for the City of Fresno, Chad Hodges from ENS, Chris Cruz from the Department of Health. I'm sorry, now it's called Department of Healthcare Services. You see how far back I go, right? Christine Borshin, the AIO for Calvet. Chuck Lott from EMC. Chuck McClellan, a special consultant for us. Craig Russell from Microsoft. David Hill from he's the CIO for the County of Marin. Deborah Hafford, Google. Ed Mossbaugh, AT&T. Fernando Gotti, Infoblox. Greg Kiefer Consulting, Jack Plating, Motorola, Jeff Funk, Department of Fish and Game, Joe Panora, the AIO for Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, Joseph Sogi, the Director for Entasis, Keith Tresh, the Director and California's Information Security Officer, Leslie Ross, Trend Micro, Robert Casserly from Code 42 Software, Robert Meza, California Technology Agency, Sergio Gutierrez, the AIO for Cal EPA, Tim Garza, the AIO for the California Natural Resources Agency, and finally, Tim Taylor, the manager of CalPERS. If you all wouldn't mind, please stand. Can you guys give them a round of applause? I also have a couple special thank yous. These people went above and beyond the call of duty. First of all, for those of you that registered through our website and had a chance to go out and look at it, that was a concept and a creation by ENS, and the two engineers of the website were Deborah Silva and Joel Arriaga Simpson. You two, could you stand, please? Did you all like the website? Awesome job, y'all. Thank you. And thanks, ENS. Greg Kiefer. I don't know whether you realize it, but you can tweet now. I haven't got there yet. But there is a hashtag for the conference, and it's up on the booth if you all have specific sessions that you really like or content you want to invite other people to or discuss it. A special thanks to Greg Kiefer and his crew for developing the tweet environment and also the mobile application that allows you to carry around the schedule and content for this event on your handheld device. Greg, thank you. And is Bill Maley in here? Bill Maley, the publisher for TechWire.net, helped inspire this vision 9 months ago. He has been a tremendous supporter, and for those of you that get his weekly missives about the awesome happenings within state government, know that you've really got a supporter in Bill. So a special thanks to Bill Maley and TechWire.net. Thank you. Okay, next slide. 9 months ago, 20 of us got together in a meeting room provided by Caltrans to begin planning a concept in which we weren't sure the timing was right. We had an idea that we wanted to identify ways that technology could be used to make government more agile. We had 3 specific goals within that environment. One was to leverage mobile technologies like smartphones, tablets, and laptops, these devices. How many, by the way, how many of you have one of these? Raise your hand. Now, everybody look around, right? Now, I'm not sure that that was applicable 9 months ago. This has really begun to accelerate. The second goal was to improve the utilization of government programs by optimizing the use of the internet to provide anytime, anywhere access to services. And the final goal was to make access to government computer systems and information more readily accessible to a mobile workforce to improve efficiency, save environmental resources, reduce costs, and expand the expertise available as a public sector workforce. In the 9 months that we have been planning this, you have truly seen the state begin to adopt these concepts and move forward with them. So we're very, very excited to hopefully give you information today to help improve and accelerate that process. You're going to have 3 tracks today. For the majority of the people in this room right now, you'll probably end up staying here for the executive track. The executive track is designed for both IT executives and business leaders to understand the promise of this technology. In this track, we're going to have Secretary Ramos start with his vision of how he sees this technology playing into the future of California, supported by his agency to help truly take advantage of the promise of this technology. Then we're going to have Ken Delaney from Gartner, who's going to identify some high-level trends that government entities across the globe are pursuing in order to best leverage this technology. We're going to have a fun presentation by Michael Locke from Google, who's going to give us a peek behind the curtain into that area that we refer to as the cloud. Who would have thought, a year ago, that the cloud would have been something cool? After lunch, Scott Gregory and Scott Patterson will take us on a tour of the future of information technology from the California Technology Agency's point of view, with specifics of the importance of global positioning information and location-based information, and how CTA is working to make that more accessible and more easily leveraged by both government programs and the California constituency. The last two sessions of the day deal with the practical applications of this technology and how the attendees can take advantage of it. We're going to have a panel of 6 speakers from Department of Motor Vehicles, the City of Fresno, and CTAP, the California Technology Application Program? I knew I was going to mess that one up. Technology Assistance Program, excuse me. And Kings County Office of Education to discuss how these different environments of state, local government, and education are beginning to implement these technologies to further their missions. We're going to follow that up with a practical guide to how to implement that from an executive perspective with Accenture and with Soren Burkhart from Accenture and Steve Westerman, the Chief Technology Officer for DMV, with a primer of the real-world implications of implementing this technology. Simultaneously, upstairs, we're going to have a technical track and a development track so that the people that are doing the technical support for these concepts will understand how to leverage them and how to implement them. And then those of you who have developers that are developing applications either in Windows apps or Android are actually going to get hands-on lab experience. The crown jewel of the event, though, is right next door. What we call the Solution Center. This is a true example of public and private, the public and private environments coming together to show how innovation can move processes forward. You're going to have 30 solutions presented by the public sector and 30 solutions presented by the private sector. Make sure you take a moment to tour those environments. I actually have details that I'll be covering in the executive tour that's going to take place at 11 o'clock. But for now, you can find information on the individual booths within your conference guide. So take a minute and look at that and make sure you tour, because did everybody get a little baggie with 3 poker chips in it? If you didn't, make sure you get that from the front counter. These poker chips have the letters I, C, and MVP stamped on them. We want you to go by, look at the government sector solutions, and drop a token in the ballot boxes you find on the tables for those solutions that you find truly innovative, cool, or what you would consider the most valuable program. At the end of the day, we're going to tally those tokens, and Secretary Ramos and Assemblymember Buchanan are going to be here to present awards to the winners. Our first speaker is somebody that I've known for years. I have a tremendous amount of respect for this man. Secretary Ramos and I found him to be a man of integrity, ingenuity, and vision. His belief in people truly serves him well, and it creates opportunities for incredible achievements as people rise to their potential under his leadership. He's excellent at mentoring, and speaking from experience, he has the patience of Job. Throughout his career, Carlos Ramos has been a leader on many of California's key technology initiatives. He has served as director of the Office of Systems Integration with a $4.5 billion portfolio of California's largest technology projects. He has also concurrently held the position of Assistant Secretary for Health and Human Services and was the agency's Senior Technology Executive. Carlos was the Principal Technology Advisor to the Secretary and was responsible for the entire HHS IT portfolio. He helped architect the consolidation of the state's largest data centers and the creation of California's Department of Technology Services. His credits are long, and given the fact that we're just a little bit behind schedule, Carlos, I hope you'll forgive me if I don't read the 2 pages of qualifications you have to do the job you're doing. I want you to know, speaking as a friend and somebody that has to interact with the state of California, I'm truly happy that you're here. Without any further ado, please help me welcome to the stage Secretary of the California Technology Agency, Carlos Ramos.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. You want your water? Well, good morning. I want to thank you, Russ. He read the introduction almost exactly as I wrote it, so thank you very much. I'm just kidding. I didn't really write it. How is everybody today? It's kind of hard to see from up here. These lights are kind of bright. You know, one of the tricks they tell you about is, you know, if you want to, avoid getting nervous, picture everybody in their underwear. Well, with these lights, it's kind of hard to see, so you guys are going to have to describe what you're wearing to me, okay? Okay, well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Russ and to the team and the advisory board and all of the sponsors for putting on this event. Throughout the planning process, Russ has been keeping me updated as to how the event is going, how the registration is going, and it's been truly amazing to me to see the number of folks and the attention that this event has gotten. It's gratifying to see. Russ told you that I was going to talk to you a little bit about my vision for technology and specifically for mobile technologies in the state. And I have to confess, I'm going to go a little bit off track from what Russ had laid out. As I was preparing for the presentation, I was thinking, okay, really, what will the folks here want to hear about from me? In terms of vision for the state's technology and going forward. We just published our strategic plan, so you can read that online. I've been speaking at a couple of different events, so you probably have heard a lot about that already. So I thought, really, what would be what should I speak about when I get up here? And I came down to 3 things. One is I thought it would be important to talk about why are we focusing on mobility anyway? Why are we in government focusing on it? Why should the private sector focus on it? And why should state and local government focus on it? So that's the first thing I want to talk to you about is why are we focusing on mobility anyway? Second thing is, with all this focus on technology, what are we doing about it? What are we in government doing about it? And Russ is right. I am going to share with you a couple of sneak previews of things that are yet to come. But I also want to share with you some of the things that we've already done in the area of mobility. And then finally, I want to talk to you a little bit, I want to end on what you all should take away from this session and in this forum. When you leave at the end of the day, what should you take with you? So in starting, I want to ask a couple of things of you. This is a little bit of audience participation. I want to see, and actually I'll ask you to stand up. If you're in the public sector, would you please stand up? I just want to see how many of you are here. Excellent. That's a really good turnout. All right, thank you. And just out of curiosity, this you could just do with a show of hands, are most of you in the technology space in the public sector? Great. Okay. Well, I'm glad to see all of you here, and just to see the cross-cutting nature of interest in this. How many of you are from outside of state government? You're in the public sector, but you're in local government. Can I see that as well, your hands? That's excellent. I'd love to see the collaboration at all levels. And then how many of you are in the commercial sector working with the public sector? If you don't mind, could I see you stand up? All right, well, excellent. Well, this is one of the few conferences where the public sector actually outweighs or outnumbers the private sector, so I'm glad to see that. So let me start by talking to you about why we at the California Technology Agency are focusing on mobility. And I think this has to go back to, to my experience as I was going through and getting ready to be appointed to this position. It's kind of a long process. You go through a whole bunch of vetting, but finally it comes down to sitting down with it where it's just you and the governor. And I have to tell you, we didn't have this great big long whiteboard session where we drew out all these plans and strategic visions and goals and this and that. Really, it was more of a discussion, and it was a very short and simple one in terms of his vision for technology and really his direction to me. He basically said to me three things. He said, I want you to make sure that when we invest in technology, that we do it for one of three objectives. One is we invest in technology to make government operations more efficient, make government work better. Secondly, he was saying, if we invest in technology, it's got to be for the purpose of making government more effective in delivering services to its constituents. And then thirdly, if we're going to invest in technology, the other thing that it should do is to make government more accessible to its consumers. So when you think about that, I thought, okay, that's a pretty easy, set of instructions to follow. So when you look at that, it's no coincidence that in our strategic plan that we just published about a month ago, the goals that are laid out there speak to those things. They speak to rationalizing the infrastructure for the purposes of making government more efficient. They speak to measuring our investments in technology based on the outcomes it produce and on seeing the impact to the effective delivery of services. And then finally, we speak to the leveraging mobility for the purpose of making government more accessible. However, if we're really going to look to impact those aspects of government through technology, it's important for us as IT practitioners, which most of you in the room seem to be, to have a clear understanding of a couple of things. First thing that we clearly need to understand are what are the needs of our constituents. If we're going to try and deliver service to them, if we're trying to be more accessible to them, what is it that they need from government? Secondly, we need to have a very clear understanding of what are the program and policy priorities of the state. Technology for the sake of technology is just, in my opinion, a waste of money. Technology for the purpose of supporting some program goal or some business operation of the state, that's a wise investment in technology. And then finally, we have to have a very clear understanding and a deep understanding of the operations of government. Going back to the issue of policy, from a policy perspective and from where I sit over at the Technology Agency, we also have to look at a bigger picture. It's not enough to just invest in technology and try to make government more accessible and more effective in the delivery of services. We also have to concern ourselves with the availability or the ability of the public to leverage our investment in technology. So from where I sit, the issues of digital divide and digital literacy are quite important and something else that we need to focus on. I just want to share with you, last week, in fact, exactly a week ago today, we launched a digital literacy campaign in California. My agency partnered up with a number of different organizations, the educational institutions, the public libraries, with a number of nonprofits and community-based organizations, and actually a number of the partners that are in this room from the private sector to promote digital literacy in California. The campaign is called iCalifornia, and there's a couple of really good reasons why we figured that was an important thing to do. First of all, it's a recognition that nowadays, in order to compete in the global economy, in order to compete in the educational experiences, and in order to compete in the job market, you need to have digital skills. I'll share with you a little story, and I shared this at the event last week. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 30, I have a daughter who's 21, and a son who's 16. He's a junior in high school. And so over the years, as I was raising them, I kind of developed a little bit of a standard speech that I used to give them. And the speech went something like this, in order to be able to, what I would do is I would start off by asking them, they didn't realize it was going to turn into a lecture, but I would start off by asking them, hey, so what kind of stuff do you like to do? When you get older, what do you want to be able to spend your time doing? My oldest son, You know, at the time when I gave him the speech, he was all into, you know, dressing with name brand clothes and had to have the right kind of jacket and the right kind of shoes and this and that. And my daughter, she really liked traveling and eating at nice restaurants and this and that. My younger son, he's kind of more in the pattern of my older son. He's got to have the right clothes and the right jeans and, you know, the right shoes. They're slightly different styles. You know, my older son was all into Sean John and at the time, you know, Nike Air Force Ones or Air Jordans and this and that. My younger son, it's all skinny jeans and Skechers shoes and Vans and this and that and skateboarder clothes. But basically, he had the same sort of taste. So I'd get them to tell me, what is it that you really like to do and what do you want to do when you get older? Once they told me, I'd say, okay, well, listen, you know, if you really want to be able to travel or if you really want to be able to buy all these nice clothes that you like, you have to have a really good job. You know, you have to be able to you know, make enough money to be able to do those things. And then I would get into them and say, you know, try getting a really good job without a good education. You know, try getting a good job without knowing how to read or having good reading skills. So it's important for you to read. Or try getting a good job without good writing skills. It's important for you to pay attention in your English classes. Or I would say, you know, try getting a good job without good math skills. I think if I were giving that speech to them today, I'd also have to add into that, try getting a good job or, you know, being competitive on the job market without good digital skills. So to us, you know, at our agency, the whole issue of digital literacy and being able to bridge that digital divide is quite important. I want to share with you a couple of statistics. And actually, if you could get the presentation up. Let me get my slides up here. I want to share with you a couple of interesting statistics because I think these will help you. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing over here. There we go. This will kind of tie into why you know, are we talking about digital divide in a discussion about digital literacy and mobility. Here's some interesting facts that we look at over at the technology agency. Essentially, if you look up there, what this tells me is that, you know, by and large, the American public is somewhat digitally literate. If you look at the percentage of ownership of PCs and laptops, you see that roughly around, you know, hovering around 60% is the number of folks in the U.S. that own one of these types of devices. Hey, Russ, is there a way to get the slide over on this monitor? The thumb drive? Well, it's okay. If not, it's no biggie. So a couple of things to be aware of here that kind of jumped out to me. Those are the statistics for the U.S. as a whole. Now, California, I have to say, we're a little bit above the national average. We're actually more in the mid-60s in terms of ownership of PCs or laptops. But if you look at the percentage of folks that own a mobile phone, a smartphone or a mobile device, it jumps up to 85%. And if you're talking about folks under the age of 35, that number goes up to 95%. Now, these are national numbers, but again, for us in California, those numbers are actually even higher. The other thing that was kind of interesting to me here is the folks that own tablet devices. You know, Russ asked you to raise your hand if you own either a smartphone or a tablet device, and most of you did. Interestingly enough, folks that own tablet devices, more of them use them outside of the workday hours than they do during the workday. You know, to some degree that makes sense, but for us in government, that tells us something. That tells us that if we're going to go after this platform, we have to build our applications and we have to make government accessible to folks in hours outside of our traditional workdays. So let's talk a little bit about California's specific facts. These are kind of interesting as well. As we look at it, you know, this is our state portal. So we get about 8 million hits a month. You know, of those, about 1,500, they come from mobile devices. That's our mobile website. So you might think, okay, 8 million versus 1,500, maybe that's not such a big deal. But that's just the state of California, you know, homepage. If you look at traffic across our websites, more than half of it currently comes from mobile devices. The other trend that we look at is in terms of what's going on in California. how folks are accessing the internet, that number has doubled in the last 3 years and doesn't show any signs of slowing down. So for us, looking at the issues of digital divide and how do you get people access to technology that don't have access, the whole issue of mobility kind of looms large as maybe one of the ways in which we're able to reach and make ourselves more accessible to folks. And it's not limited just to technology in the internet space. Those bottom two statistics there, this is something that we've been tracking for a number of years. We're going to talk a little bit about a project a little later called the RED Project, which is specifically focused on trying to make 911 services more responsive to the mobile platform. But if you look at that, last year we got something like 25 million calls, phone calls into 911 centers. And of that, 77% were from mobile phones. Now, to a certain extent, that's understandable. A lot of them are probably traffic related. But on the other hand, that's a lot of phones. That's a lot of folks using mobile devices and mobile technologies. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The interesting thing for me is that this pointed out that we as a culture love our mobile phones. Here's a couple of interesting statistics that I thought were pretty telling about how devoted people are to their mobile phones. How many of you, just based on this, would rather give up your phone than your coffee? Or maybe let's flip that around. How many of you would rather give up your coffee than your phone? Can I see a show of hands? Just a couple. How many of you, this is, obviously Valentine's Day is coming up, but how many of you would fall into that latter category of giving up chocolate rather than their phone? Even fewer, really. So what this tells me, what it tells us in government, it's that it's a mobile world that we're living in. Here's some other interesting statistics. The world population, 7 billion people, just hit that last year. How many mobile phones are out there? 5 billion. It's estimated that in 2 years, accessing the internet over a mobile platform will outstrip and overtake desktop internet usage. And then a couple of other interesting statistics. I kind of heard the sound back there, so I know some of you are playing Angry Birds right now. But if you look at how many apps are out there and how many have been downloaded, it's amazing. To me, again, it means that we have to pay attention to this mobile technology and the mobile platforms that are out there, and especially around mobile phones. Folks in California, which is ahead of the rest of the country, really focus on mobile phones and mobile platforms and mobile technologies, and they're really devoted to it. You need some more proof? Here's some more proof. These are actual statistics from the Pew Research Center. 22% of Americans would rather give up their toothbrush than their mobile phone. And 33% would rather give up sex. Okay, let's see a show of hands here. No, I'm serious. How many of you thought this picture of the guy with the teeth was actually a picture of Russ? No? Okay, I didn't either. Not too many hands. But think about it. I mean, these are pretty telling statistics. And a couple of other observations I would make about this. One is, these folks that answered to these questions probably are not from California. And then secondly, if they're going to give up your toothbrush, the chances of that latter category happening anyway, it wasn't going to happen, so it probably wasn't a big sacrifice for these folks. But the point is, folks are really stuck on mobile phones and the mobile platforms, and it's something that we in government need to pay attention to. The other thing that's very obvious to us in government, those of us in the technology space and in the policymaking space, is that technology has changed the way we do stuff around. Here's a couple of easy examples. Technology has become more and more mobile and more nimble, right? Remember how computers started, right? With big mainframes. Now we have more computing power in our hands that we can take with us anywhere. Than they did back in the days when they were launching, rockets over to the moon. Same thing with phones, right? Remember how phones started out? They weren't too mobile. They had limited uses. You didn't take pictures with your phones. You didn't surf the web with your phones. Nowadays, phones are much more mobile. They're much more You can do a lot more with them. Photography. This was another kind of interesting experience for me. I can see that there's a lot of younger folks in the room, but there's also some of you that remember the days when the big controversy was, is Fuji better or is Kodak film better, right? When I was preparing this slide deck, I was talking to my son, and I mentioned this to him. I was saying, yeah, you know, back then I remember, because I used to be a photographer when I was younger, the controversy was which kind of film was better. And he's looking at me going, film? What's film, right? The point is technology has really changed. Even the way we listen to music and the way my kids listen to music or get their entertainment. I remember the days of buying albums and listening to 8-tracks, and I used to hate 8-tracks because in order to listen to a song, you had to skip like between tracks, right? And you could get kind of close. You could say, okay, well, it's the second song on the 4th track, right? So you can kind of skip to that track and play the first song, and then you get to your song. I remember one year for Christmas, I got a little cassette recorder as a Christmas gift, and I thought, this is great. Now I can make my own music. You know, I can record my own stuff. Back then, if I wanted to hear a particular song, let's say I remember this clearly, I was trying to record this particular Steve Miller song. I used to have to leave my recorder next to the radio so that when the song would come on, I'd hit it, right? And then you had to hope the DJ wouldn't talk over the first 30 seconds of it. The point is, back then, we didn't have the choices and the options that we do now. You know, technology has made it so that folks get what they want when they want it. You know, nowadays you can program a radio station and play all the music you want. You know, back then you'd buy an album, it'd have maybe 13, 14 songs on it if it was a double album. You know, how many songs can you fit on an iPod? And how many of those songs can be just in the sequence you want and only the type of music you want without commercial interruption? The point is, technology, and particularly mobile technologies, have really changed our expectations and the way people work. It's changed the way people interact socially too, right? I look at the way my kids talk with their friends or they organize an event. We'll be sitting there and, you know, having dinner at home, and my son will say, oh, you know, I just got invited to go to the basketball game. I say, when? How? You know, I didn't hear the phone, nobody came to the door, when? And well, you know, he's texting under the table, you know, or he's Twittering, or he's, you know, on Facebook connecting with folks. And through the use of mobile technologies, again, tied in with social media, it's changed the world. And for those of us in government, you know, some of the events of the last year of 2011, especially back in the Middle East, and, you know, this whole Occupy movement, really are something that we need to pay attention to. You know, in some cases, some of these governments, especially in the Middle East, didn't pay attention to the power of mobile technology and the power of social media, and it caused them some significant changes in their government. We in California and in the public sector in the US have to be a lot more diligent and have to pay a lot of attention to technology. So in answer to the question of why are we here, it's because mobile technology is a powerful medium for transforming government and for making government serve its constituents a lot better. It's a powerful medium to make government more accessible to consumers. So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing about it. You know, we haven't really been sitting on our laurels or just kicking back in government. Despite the budget challenges, despite everything that's been going on in California and all the changes that have happened in the technology community, we have done some cool stuff around technology, around mobile technology. I want to share with you the impact that focusing on technology can have in a very real world sense. We had a project that we launched a few years ago called the RED Project. You know, I mentioned earlier in the slides about how 77% of the calls that come in to our 911 dispatch centers come in over mobile phones. Well, those present some specific challenges that maybe aren't associated with the landline. First of all, with the landline, you know, you can you call in, it'll tell you the dispatcher where you're located. That's a little more challenging with a cell phone, right? So what was happening is, and the calls get routed differently too. So what we did is we said, okay, one of the challenges that we're having is because there's so much coming in through these mobile phones, calls are coming in, they're being routed to the wrong public safety answering point, to the wrong dispatch center. That's slowing down response times. In some cases where certain cell phone sectors were really busy, the calls that were being routed were overwhelming some of the local public safety answering points. So people were getting busy signals. In the 911 world, a delay of a few minutes or even a few seconds could, in a very real sense, make the difference between life and death, or safety and bad outcomes. So this project, what we did is we focused on going through and saying, okay, let's analyze where the calls are coming in, and let's do some tweaking around the way that these calls are routed. And as a result, by focusing on the fact that mobile technology was a bigger and bigger part of what was happening in this space, those are the results that we got. We reduced the number of busy signals from 42% down to 2%. The ability for different dispatch centers, whether it was the CHP or local law enforcement, to handle calls increased significantly. And then we decreased the response times for emergency responders. And we reduced the incidence of people being sent off in the wrong direction. So just by focusing on mobility and on mobile technologies, we were able to produce those sorts of results. And this last bullet, I just put it in just to brag a little bit, but we won a national award for this, for achievement in the field of technology. That was pretty significant for us in California. I think we were one of only 10 awards nationally. And since I just saw her walk in, I'm going to go ahead and point out to you Karen Wong, Karen, if you don't mind standing up, who heads up our public safety communication office and whose team ran this project. So Karen, thank you. So that was one of them. Here's another thing that we've done, and again, most of you are familiar with this, but this is the idea of putting online our state portal. I have a BlackBerry. Russ was asking earlier, how many devices do you carry? Well, I carry a couple of different devices. I have a BlackBerry device, and when you used to go on the state of California portal website, it was kind of hard to get it if you had a text device, right? If you didn't have a touch screen on there. So we developed a template. We're going to sneak preview our new version of the template, but essentially a template for a mobile application. And we pioneered it on our state of California portal. 1,500 hits a day. The way that the template is designed, it recognizes if you have a touch or a text device, and it displays it in that way. It's location aware, and it's a standard template that makes it easy to stand up applications. One last example, and then we'll get into what's coming in the future here. I spoke earlier to the issues of digital divide. Well, digital divide isn't only an issue of who has access to technology. Sometimes the digital divide is cultural. Sometimes it's socioeconomic. So some departments are actually taking that issue to heart and saying, okay, well, if you look at who has access to technology, it also varies by ethnic group. So here we have an example of the DMV. Bernard's sitting over here, so thank you, Bernard, for letting me use this as an example. But DMV, not only did they develop a mobile portal that you can use on different mobile platforms, but they've done it in Spanish. And as a result, you can see the sort of traction that they're getting. Okay. So let's get into what's coming. What else do we have in store? I'm not going to steal their thunder, but I know, I think it's at the 1 o'clock session. Some of the folks from our agency are going to be showcasing our new and improved mobile template, our version 3 mobile template. I'll only say this about the template. If you want the full details, you got to go to that session. The template uses GPS-driven applications for mobile mapping, and it's built into it. It's free. It's downloadable. It's available to anyone in the public sector or the private sector, especially if you're doing business in California. We want you to leverage this template. We've developed some implementation and training videos so that you can download those as well, so that you can basically do self-service with the application, with the template. And we've developed a one-stop online shop where you can get not only the template, all the videos, all the resources and tools that we have. And That's californiamobile.ca.gov. If you want any more than that, I encourage you to go to the session. What else is coming? Okay, so in the next few years, or actually starting this year, we're implementing a mobility governance structure. We're going to establish within our agency an organization that's part of our e-services offices focused specifically on mobility. And their job is going to be to establish a framework which makes it easy for government to stand up and deploy mobile applications. They're going to develop a business plan. Actually, I say they're going to, but I know that they already have a draft ready. I think I'm being briefed on it next week, and I know that because I saw them in the meeting rooms where they were actually having whiteboard sessions over at the technology agency. We're going to develop, and we're in the process of developing, a secure mobile identity solution, the process of developing a mobile payment processing solution, and we have apps that are coming that departments are working on individually right now that leverage real-time data. Here's a couple of examples there out of the Department of Corrections and the State Controller's Office. And we're also developing and putting in place a mobile GIS service offering through our agency. These will include establishing a statewide geoportal, a statewide geocoding services, and a geodata services. These will be under the direction of Assistant Secretary Scott Gregory. He's presenting, I think, at the 1 o'clock session. The mobility organizational structure will be part of our e-services office, which is under the direction of Assistant Secretary Scott Patterson. Scott, I know he's here. I think he's presenting also as part of the 1 o'clock session. And then obviously the secure mobile identity solution will be under the direction of Director of OIS, Keith Tresh. Okay, so in terms of what we want you to take away from this day, one is understand what's coming in the way of mobility. Secondly, understand that it's important for government to focus on mobility as an application development platform and as a means of serving our constituents. For those of you in the private sector, I want you to really focus on helping the state to develop and deploy these applications. For those of you in the public sector, I want you to go next door and look in the Solution Center. A lot of these applications have already been developed. Departments, state and local agencies at different levels have developed some very neat and unique and on-point applications. So we'd like you to take a look at those and see, is there something there that we can leverage to better serve our constituents? Or is there something there that triggers an idea that you can develop? And once you have that idea, leverage the resources and the tools that we put up on our mobile site. With that, I'll conclude my comments. I want to wish you a good day and a good forum. There's a lot of very helpful information that's coming in the next days. Make the most of it. And then other than that, just keep your eyes on where we're going in the next year. You're going to see a lot of development in the mobile space. So Russ, I don't know if we have any time for questions or not, but if so, I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Okay. All right. Well, I'll be around, so you guys can catch me around here.